Hey, okay, so it has been a minute since I have done a 3D foundation tutorial, so I wanted to hop on and do one of those today. So all of my makeup comes in a single compact. This compact holds literally everything that I use besides actual mascara. So it's got foundation, contour, bronzer, eyeshadows, color correctors, highlighters, illuminators, stuff for my brows, like everything that you need for your face comes in this single compact, and it's completely customizable. Now, I've already done my eyes, and then I always like to prep my skin prior to doing my 3D foundation. So I have drier skin, so I personally like to moisturize in the morning, but I do like to give like 15 or 20 minutes time for it to kind of absorb into my skin before I apply my makeup. Another thing that I like to do is obviously apply some form of SPF for protection for my skin. So today the one I'm gonna use, this is just the Pomifera Youth Activating BB Cream. This one has a broad spectrum mineral SPF of 30, and I really like this one because it also includes skincare. And if I can kind of double up on sunscreen and skincare and even get a little bit of coverage, I am all for it. So getting started, I always start with my highlight shades, and I always recommend 3 different shades, one for color correction, one as a main shade, and then one for brightening. Now, I always start with my color correcting shade first, and basically I'm gonna place this color on any of the areas where I have deeper pigmentation. And this is gonna be a little bit different for everybody. For me though, you'll notice I'm a little darker here on my chin. I'm a little darker here in the cheek area, and then my nose is also a darker pigmentation. So I'm gonna very lightly tap into my color correcting shade. This is the darkest of my highlight shades. And I am just gonna very gently apply the shade in those couple of areas that I mentioned where my pigmentation is a little bit darker. And this is just to kind of even out the skin tone and kind of match the depth of those areas where my skin is a little bit darker, but also give it a little bit more of an even base. Now you'll notice that I did not go all over my face. I literally just tapped very lightly into the areas where I had that deeper pigmentation just to even out those areas. Another area I could go into is underneath my eyes right here where I have some darker circles, but I'm actually gonna use a different product. So I'm kind of leaving my under eyes alone for now, and I will do something with them at the end. But again, I just tapped really lightly in with my darkest highlight shade only in the areas where I had that darker pigmentation. Everywhere else I left alone because I'm gonna go into my main shade for those areas. So now I'm gonna tap into my main highlight shade, and I'm basically gonna fill in all of the gaps where I did not place that color correcting shade. And it's gonna go in the areas where my skin tone is a little bit more even. It kind of matches my overall skin tone. It's kind of where the lighter pigmentation is. That's where I'm going to be placing this main highlight shade. Now, benefits that come from using multiple highlight shades is that you're gonna go through a lot less product. And the reason why is because you're concentrating the product that you need only in the areas that you need it. If I was trying to go in with my main highlight shade to do my entire face, I would be using a lot more product in the areas where my pigmentation was deeper in order to try to mask it. Whereas by going in with a color that's a little bit deeper in tone and that kind of can neutralize that area, I'm able to apply a lot less product of the color correcting shade in those areas, and I don't have to use up any of my main highlight. And when I place my main highlight on the areas where my skin tone's a little bit more lighter and more even, I'm able to just do a light dusting just to kind of give it a little bit more balance, but I don't have to use a lot of product in those areas either. And so my products, my highlight colors last a really long time. Something else that you'll notice, even though I use 2 different highlight shades, one of them quite a bit darker than the other one, my skin tone doesn't look like it's two-toned. And the reason why is because my natural skin has areas that are darker and lighter, and by making my makeup kind of match that by having some areas that are a little bit darker and some areas that are lighter, it just looks natural. Our faces are amazing in the sense that they're kind of like a map, and if we follow what our faces are doing in some areas with our makeup, it actually gives a more natural appearance at the end. And then my final highlight shade is a brightening highlight shade, and I like to pop just a little bit right on the center of my chin, I put it right above my Cupid's bow. I will put just a little bit, almost just very lightly going on top of where I put that color correcting shade, but I just do it kind of down the side of my nose and then just right underneath kind of the eye area. Again, I'm gonna do some color correcting right underneath my eyes, so I'm not going into that area like I normally would, but I am just kind of brightening up this area just a little bit, very lightly tapping. I also like to go on the very outer corner of my eye. And then I'll also usually just use my pinky, and I'll just go down the very center of my nose. And then I'll grab my damp perfector sponge. I've gotten it wet, I've wrung it out really well, and it just makes it kind of double up in size and makes it more squishy. And then I will just kind of very gently tap on those areas just to kind of blend them in a little bit. Now, next I'm gonna go into my contour shade. Now, normally the brush that I use for this is the detail brush. This one is amazing for doing your contour, but lately I've actually been using this brush right here. This one's called the Shape Brush. It's actually a DEMI brush, but I really like it because it gives a very soft contour. Now with contour, you're just gonna place it where the natural shadows fall on your face, essentially. Now I have some very defined hollows in my cheek, so it's usually pretty easy for me to figure out where I need to place contour. If you have a face that doesn't have like as high a cheekbones as I do, and you don't have that same definition there, then the key is just to go from the very top of your ear and then work your way down, stopping about the end of your eye, but working your way down towards where your mouth is, and that'll just kind of give you an idea. You can also just kind of feel for your cheekbones, and you're just gonna hug up that contour right underneath there. So then I'm just gonna start tapping the shade into that area. I always recommend going higher as opposed to going lower, because if you go higher, it's gonna give your face more lift. It also helps to prevent you from accidentally creating like a 5 o'clock shadow. You can also pull it along your jawline just to give you a little bit more definition down there as well. I also like to go down the sides of my nose, right along where I put that brightening highlight shade. And then I'll just kind of marry them together and then blend those out just to give a little bit more definition on my nose as well. Now, if I did not have bangs, I would also do contour right along my hairline. I would put my highlight shade kind of across my forehead. I put maybe the brightening highlight just kind of in the center area. And then like I said, I would contour across my forehead. Because I have bangs, there's no point in wasting product or time doing that. So that's why I skipped that area. But most people don't have bangs, so just keep that in mind. Next, I'm gonna go into my bronzer. Now, I like to place my bronzer next to a couple of illuminators, the rose gold illuminator and the glow illuminator, and then I will blend the three together. And for bronzer, you're gonna go on the high parts of your face, which is usually on your cheekbones, where the sun naturally would hit first. So it's kind of right above where you've got the contour, and you're just gonna go right along that cheekbone area. And again, if I didn't have bangs, I'd probably do like a C shape. So it'd kind of be like on the outer edge of my forehead and down and around. But for me, I'm just gonna focus right here on that cheekbone area. I also put a little bit across the tip of my nose and then a little bit on the chin. I also like to go down my neck a little bit just to kind of blend some of the colors together so there's not as much of a stark contrast between my face and my neck, because I am a little bit lighter on my neck than I am in the face. Now, if you're fair skinned like me, adding in bronzer can be a little bit intimidating because we always think of it as kind of being orangey. But really, if you do it right, if you use a really light hand and you're using the right color, then it's just going to add warmth and light to your face, and it's not going to give you an orangey appearance. And like I said, I like to mix it with illuminators, and I will go a little bit heavier on like the rose gold illuminator than I will on the bronzer, just because it adds that warmth and that glow that I think is super pretty, but without, again, creating that orangey warm tinge that wouldn't be complementary to my skin tone. So next I'm gonna go into my color correcting shades. These are called DEMI correctors, and I like to use these for my under eye. I also have a few spots of melasma over here on this cheek that tend to stand out, and so I'm going to color correct those as well. So DEMI correctors are very unique, and they're all about color science, and basically you're going to look at what the excess color is in your skin that's causing the distraction, like the dark under eyes or the melasma spots, and you're going to use a color that's opposite to it on the color wheel of a DEMI corrector color, and you're gonna use that to neutralize the area. Now, I'm not gonna get into all the ins and outs of DEMI because that's kind of like a whole separate video. I do have tons of resources on it, and I can link some of those if you are interested in learning more about DEMI. So for these melasma spots, I am using a color called 03, and I'm using very little product, and I'm using a brush called the Spot Brush. And I'm just very gently tapping on those areas just to kind of neutralize the melasma spot. And then for my under eyes, I'm just gonna go into a shade called 01, and I'm just gonna go in where I have the darkest pigmentation, and I'm just going to very gently tap into those areas just to kind of brighten it up and to remove the excess blue that's kind of showing through and neutralize that area. And now I'm gonna dip into my lip and cheek shades, and I'm gonna add a little flush of color to my cheeks. So I'm just using that same shape brush that I applied my contour, and I'm just very gently tapping or stippling that blush shade right above that contour, right on top of where I put the bronzer. That bronzer is gonna still poke through, but it's going to kind of have that blush on top of it, and it's just gonna create a really pretty flush of color. Now, when it comes to applying a blush, you can go on like the apples of your cheeks. That'll give you a little bit more of a fuller look. So if you tend to be a little bit more narrow in the face, some people like to add it a little bit further forward. You can also kind of have it going back and a little bit higher if you want to add a little bit more lift to your face. I personally kind of do a little bit of a combo. I will go back and up just to give a little bit more lift, but I also am okay pulling it forward a little bit just because the natural flush of my cheeks, if you remember way back at the beginning of the video, I tend to have redness in this area, and so I feel like it's a little bit more natural for my like face, the mapping of my face like I talked about before, to have a little bit more of that flush of color pulled more towards the front. So I kind of do a mix, but again, it just kind of depends on your preferences and your face shape and all of that. And then sometimes right at the end, I will go in with my brightening highlight shade, and I'll just kind of clean up where I've applied stuff and then pull it down a little bit. And then I'll just go in with my perfector sponge afterwards just to soften up that line. This just kind of creates a little bit more of a lift. It kind of cleans up, like I said, where maybe it got a little bit sloppy. And then I just kind of blend it in very gently with the perfector sponge just to clean it up. And then because it's a cream, I can pop that same lip and cheek shade onto my lips and get a little color and a little bit more of a cohesive look there. And then I like to finish off with my setting spray. And I'll let that dry just for a second, and then I'm gonna finish off as the last touch with my illuminator. Now, I often will use a cream illuminator and I'll just apply it with my finger, but today I think I'm gonna use a brush and I'm gonna do a powder illuminator. And I'm doing a mix of two shades. They're so pretty. This is a mix of a shade called Georgia and Photoshop. Both of these are powders, and with powders, you're gonna get a little bit more of a pop, and it's so, so pretty. And then I'll just run a little bit down the very center of my nose. And then this right here is the finished look. Now, one thing I want to mention is that I have been using this product and been an artist since 2017. So obviously I use quite a few techniques. I use different tools and things like that, but you can also start out a little bit more simply. It doesn't have to be quite as elaborate. When I very first started, I had 4 colors. I had a highlight, a contour, the lip and cheek, and an illuminator, and then a single brush. Now, I will recommend more than that as you get started, because that's one of the things that comes with like time and wisdom, right? Is that you learn that there is a better way of doing things, which I have learned, which is why I recommend more than one highlight shade, because I know what it can do for your skin and for the overall finished look. But it doesn't have to be as elaborate either. If this feels a little bit more overwhelming, we can definitely simplify the process for you as you're getting started. So if you are interested in trying out 3D foundation and you want to get color matched to this, I can help figure out exactly which colors are going to be best suited to your skin tone. So I'm gonna go ahead and include a link. You just need to submit a photo, no makeup, natural lighting, and then I can help figure out exactly what shades you need for your skin tone and give you recommendations for what I think you need to get started. Now, the ideal way is to get color matched through a photo, because then I can obviously recommend very specific colors that are customized to you and your skin tone and what you want and need for getting started. However, Seint does offer some pre-built collections as an alternative to getting like custom color matched. They have 8 different levels, so that way you can go from like the fairest of the fair to like those richer, deeper skin tones, and then everything in between. And I will go ahead and I will link those as well. And then as an artist with this company, I also want to share with you that Seint does also offer a business opportunity, which is something that I'm a part of. Basically, if you want to share these products with family and friends and market them online or whatever, then you can actually earn a commission off of the sales and have it be something that contributes to your income. So if that's something that you would be interested in and want to learn a little bit more about, I will include a link with some information. And if you decide it's something that would be a good fit for you, then I would absolutely love to have you join my team and be your mentor here in Seint.